Hey guys, Lucy's mom here, and today I wanted to talk a little bit about my third miscarriage or infant loss, and also kind of talk about the difference between the pills that you can insert vaginally for your miscarriage and a DNC, and kind of my experience and the difference. I know whenever I get presented with information, I tend to go to YouTube. Maybe that's a bad thing, but I just kind of want to see other people's experiences and see their thought processes and what they've gone through. And so I just thought I would kind of come on here and share my experience with you. So I've actually kind of gone through both. So backstory, I had a miscarriage in January 2018. In January 2019, I went into labor early. They still, to this day, don't know why, because I had a healthy baby and I was healthy pregnancy, but I went into labor, unknown reasons, and Lucy, my daughter, she passed while she was going through the canal. So she was a healthy baby up until that point, so they don't really consider her stillborn because she was alive prior to. And that was a full-blown 36-hour labor. And then fast forward 8 months, it's August, today's the 13th, I believe, August 13th, 2019. I just had a DNC yesterday for a miscarriage on, there was no heartbeat this past Friday. And that was my third pregnancy. So my first pregnancy, this pregnancy, my third pregnancy, very much mimicked my first one. My first one, I went in, didn't know any better. I thought I was about 7 weeks, 7.5 weeks. I went in, they said, oh, you're measuring 5 weeks and 6 days, and you're just getting a heartbeat. That's great news. We'll keep monitoring everything. And so I was like, okay, that's great, but timing to me felt off. I've always had a very, very regular cycle. I know when I'm going to start my period. It is like clockwork. I can feel my body ovulating. It's really weird. I just know. And so it kind of didn't make sense to me that I thought I was 7.5 weeks, and I was only measuring 5 weeks and 6 days and just getting a heartbeat. But I was okay with it. I didn't know any better. So a couple weeks later, fast forward, I'm now, by their clock, it's 2.5 weeks later, and I start bleeding. And they're like, oh, it's normal. And I'm like, no, this doesn't feel normal. Something's wrong. So I went in for an ultrasound, and as I get there, it goes from spotting to extremely heavy bleeding. And when they looked on the ultrasound, there was no heartbeat. And this was my very first pregnancy, and I was just absolutely crushed. I was kind of trying to figure out, do I want to do a DNC? Do I want to do the pills? And I had opted for a DNC. And I was talking to the doctor in her office at the time. My doctor was actually on call at the hospital. So I saw one of the other group practitioners. My baby in the back, and basically, we talked about the pills, we talked about the pills, and we talked about the DNC, and I just felt like it was best to have a DNC scheduled for the next morning. But they wouldn't give me any pain medicine because I was going to have the surgery procedure scheduled the next day, so I couldn't take anything else for pain that night. While I was there, I got really, really sick. I started having these horrible hot flashes. I was nauseous, and I ended up nearly passing out on the bathroom floor at the doctor's office. They had to unlock it, come basically pick me up. I was sweating, I was vomiting, I was cold, I was hot, my body was freaking out, and I was cramping and in so much pain, it was almost unbearable. So they take me to the emergency room, to Women's Hospital, and go to the emergency room, and they give me some pain medicine and things like that. And luckily my doctor happened to be on call. And what they realized was my body was already kind of doing it on its own. And my doctor came in and said, instead of doing the DNC, since your body's pretty much doing this on your own, why don't we do the pills, and it'll kind of expedite the process and finish getting the tissue and everything out. And you don't have to go through surgery. We don't have to worry about scraping the uterus or anything like that. And it's more natural since your body's doing it all the way on its own. And so I was great with that. I was okay with that. So I went home that night. They gave me some pain meds. I went home and I took the pills. And what I didn't realize is my body didn't react the way most people's bodies react. Most people will pass a lot quickly. And the first round didn't work, so when I went 2 weeks later to make sure that everything was expelled and all the tissue was out, it wasn't all out. So I had to do another round of it. And so the miscarriage in itself ended up lasting about 3.5 to 4 weeks. It was a really long process. It was painful. It was definitely emotional, but also because the process and there was tissue in there for so long, for me, it felt like I was postpartum is the best way I could explain it. I remember feeling sad, but it was more of a hormonal shift of sadness. Just a lot. I mean, a miscarriage is already hard enough as it is, and then you've got the hormones and you're feeling it and you're going through all of that, and you feel your levels drop. I mean, for me, I'm ultra sensitive, and I could just tell a huge difference that I wasn't myself. It took me a long time to get back to myself. Fast forward to this miscarriage, it was very similar, but because I was closely monitored from the first miscarriage and then having premature labor at 23 weeks, I went in a little bit earlier, and I thought I was about 6.5 weeks. And we got there and the gestational sac was empty. And so they thought I had a blighted ovum. And so she said, come back in a week. We're going to check and see if anything appears. Maybe timing is off again. Maybe timing is off, and maybe you're just ovulated later than we thought. So I came back, and the good news is there was a gestational sac. There was a yolk sac. So we kind of had this, we had like really good, in my mind, okay, we're progressing, we're moving forward. But the only thing is they were measuring me at 6 weeks and 2 days. And at the time I thought I was about 7.5 weeks. And just the way even my doctor was concerned, because when I told her I got the pregnancy test, I tested positive before I even missed my period. So the fact that we still didn't have a fetal pulse or a heartbeat or anything like that yet, I was really, really far behind, and I didn't have great odds. And so she said, again, come back in a week. And the waiting between these weeks is like horrible, because you're trying to just block it out and function and go to work and do whatever you need to do. In the back of your mind, you're treating yourself like you're pregnant. You're eating right, you're not having alcohol, you're doing everything, but chances are that you're going to end up miscarrying. It was just a very sad feeling and confused feeling. And so, we get the yolk sac. She says, come back in a week. So I come back in a week, and this past Friday. So a few days ago, today's Tuesday. So this is on Friday. And basically we go in and, the week before, the Friday before that, we went in and I got a heartbeat. I got a very low, faint heartbeat, which was exciting because I could see the little flicker on the screen. I know what to look for at this point. The bad news is that the heartbeat was so faint and it was so slow that either it was just starting or it was fizzling out, and you just kind of really can't tell unless you get ultrasound every day. And I was still measuring 6 weeks and 2 days. So here I am, like 8.5 weeks, something like that, and I'm still measuring 6 weeks and 2 days. And I measured 6 weeks and 2 days the week before that. So it's weird because there's development but not growth. And so with that being said, I basically got a 70% miscarry rate just based on the entire situation. And so this past Friday we went in, and sure enough, there was no heartbeat. And my doctor was on vacation, but she has a really great team. I love all of the practitioners in their team, and we already had a plan that I was going to take the pills like I did before, and we knew what we were going to do. I was going to go home with a prescription for the Cytotec and some pain meds, and I was going to take the pills when I chose to, at home in comfort. And then we were checking out, and I got to thinking about it, and I'm like, wait a second, that was not comfort for me. Going through that miscarriage and passing all that naturally, and I know that not all miscarriages are painful, but I'm now a week further along than I was my last miscarriage, and that miscarriage was extremely physically painful. Just the hot flashes, the cold flashes, the nausea, all of that stuff, and then the cramping were like mini contractions. I mean, for me, it was a horrible, horrible experience. And remembering how long that process took also wasn't really a big thing for me. And I didn't want to go through that for an entire month or 2 weeks or however long it was going to take my body to go through this. So as we're checking out, I turned to my husband. I'm like, let's just talk to her about a DNC. He's like, okay. So we go back upstairs and we talk to the doctor, and we're talking to her about, the pros and cons and the risks associated with the DNC. And my concern was, and when you're going through this, you're not thinking, but will I be able to get pregnant again after a DNC? Is it going to have any long-lasting effects? And then I thought of several of my friends who have had DNCs, and they've gone on to have, kids and stuff. And so for us, that was the decision that we decided to make. And that was on a Friday. And of course, I couldn't get in until Monday. They don't operate on Saturdays and Sundays. And I'll say, the process was pretty easy. I think I was more nervous about the anesthesia than anything else, and waking up and being nauseous and all of that stuff. Obviously I had anxiety because, who wants to go under? It's, being sedated is, I'm a type A, a little bit of a control freak. And so it was a little nerve wracking. But I got some good sedation medicine, some good relaxant, and then I don't really remember anything other than waking up. And this was yesterday, so I've been home since yesterday afternoon. I haven't had any nausea or anything like that. The anesthesiologist did a great job. I've had some light bleeding and some cramping. I did use the heating pad yesterday evening, but I will say it's not anything, to me, it's not any worse than a period. And I don't feel that hormonal shift that I did with taking the pills, because I feel like I'm hoping that everything is kind of cleaned out and my body's starting to realize. And I know my HTC levels still may be going down. I've watched enough YouTube videos and watched you guys know that y'all kept checking your pregnancy test lines, and I don't care. I don't have any desire to do all of that. But for me, and maybe it's just because I'm still numb and processing through everything, and I think I've had a long time to process on this one because I kind of knew it was coming. It was just waiting for the final, yes, there's no heartbeat. These are our next steps, that I was a little bit more prepared, or maybe I'm just numb and kind of in shock and I probably haven't processed this yet. But I will say, knowing that I'm not going to be home all week and bleeding and going through the pain and all of that, I will say for us in this situation, it was probably a better decision for me, just because it gives me a little bit closure a little bit faster. There was one thing that I will just put out there I did not like. It did upset me and it did put me in tears, was the doctor's orders. Instead of it saying missed miscarriage, it's written as missed abortion. And I hate that word. It just made my stomach turn that that's written like that. And I know that that's the medical term, but part of the reason I didn't want to do a DNC was because, to me, it was similar to what people do when they get an abortion. And I have to remember that the difference is they're taking a life versus, and this is just my view, you can be different, but an abortion is kind of like where you're taking that life, you're electing that, versus my embryo or fetus or whatever point you want to call it, a baby, already passed and died, and that has to be removed from my body. That's whether it's natural or whether that's with some medical help, it doesn't get to stay in there. And so that's not a choice that I get to make. But I definitely didn't like that. So if you see that and you're going through that, just kind of be prepared that maybe on your doctor's orders you may see that word. I didn't know, and it definitely caught me off guard. So but in general, it did give me some closure. And like I said, I'm not in pain. I'm doing okay. The other thing is it allows us to be ready to start trying again, or go to a specialist I should say, to kind of figure out what's going on. On this pregnancy, I think the reason my body didn't do it on its own like it did last time and recognize that there wasn't life is they had me on baby aspirin, and they also had me on progesterone supplements orally, 200 milligrams a day, to try to support any pregnancy, make sure we didn't have blood clotting orders, even though I've tested negative for the anticoagulants and the genetic testing and everything's come back fine. They just did it as preventative. I've also done some research, and again, I'm not a medical doctor by any means, so I'm not telling you what to do, but I was researching that there's an antioxidant called NAC. It's a short version. I don't know what the full version is, but it's just an antioxidant, and when it's paired with folic acid, women that have multiple miscarriages in the past, it's supposed to kind of help, somehow help with that. And studies show that they don't have as many miscarriages from prior to without taking it. So maybe Google it, do your own research on it. But anyways, obviously didn't help in my case, because I think sometimes you just, when you miscarry that early, most of the time it's chromosomal. And so no matter what supplements or progesterone or anything that you take, it's not gonna turn something that's not gonna work into making it work, I guess. And so, but because I was on the progesterone, I think my body wasn't allowed to contract and do what it was supposed to kind of expel. So that's one thing. I think if you're probably already going through the miscarriage, maybe the pills can kind of help that. I did like that they were natural. I liked the fact that nobody was in there scraping out my uterus. There was a lot that I did like about it, but on the flip side, for me personally, it took a long time to wrap it up, and we're mentally exhausted, and we're tired, and we're hoping for a break and a baby. And so for us, having that closure, because we've been processing it for a few weeks, and having that closure to be able to move on and just, look for the good things to come next, or go see a specialist or whatever we need to do, we're ready to do that. So I'm hoping that this video helps you if you're kind of caught in the middle or trying to figure out what to do. If you've had multiple pregnancies, know that you're not alone. I go to YouTube a lot because sometimes you can feel like this sucks and it's not fair, and it's not fair. But seeing other people go through it too makes you know that there's hope and you're not alone. And when you see these people that have had 7 or 8 miscarriages and then they get a beautiful baby, to me, like, those are my heroes, and that gives me hope to keep on trucking along and to keep going. So hopefully one day we'll have a healthy baby and we'll be an inspiration to other people. And hopefully, I think the next pregnancy, I really just want to start documenting it more, because I think there's something about pregnancy after so many infant losses. Each one is scary. Each pregnancy, you're just kind of saying, what if, and is it really going to work out this time? And so I'll definitely try to document it and maybe vlog it a little bit and kind of see how that goes. And if it helps one other person, then I feel like it did its job, and it's a little bit therapeutic for me too. So anyways, I'll keep everybody updated, and I hope everybody has a good week, and talk to you soon. Bye.